Hello everybody, Sean here. Welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be covering a question by Karen Jones. She asks, what are the different ways in Photoshop that you can color correct a color cast in an image? So what she's talking about is not so much levels, but correcting a color cast. Say if an image has a blue tint to it, or maybe it's just a warm image and you want to cool it. Okay, there's three ways to do this, and I'm going to actually go through all three. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add a levels adjustment. Now of course you have your histogram. Now a real quick brief description of the histogram. Whatever's empty on the left side is you're missing information in the blacks. You're missing information in the shadows. And on the left side, whatever is missing, you're missing information in your highlights, the whites. And then you have your midtones, which is gray. Okay, so a lot of times people will work on an image and they'll just work in RGB and they'll just slide the blacks, slide the midtones, and they'll slide the whites. Okay, but this isn't what she's asking. So this is like the next step further. Okay, because you could adjust your levels and your contrast and your vibrancy in an image, but what about white balance? What about a color cast? Well, there's three ways to do it. One I think of as the easier way, one I think of as like a medium way, and one I think of as maybe the longer way, but maybe most accurate. Remember now, in Photoshop there's always more than one way to do each task. So instead of just showing you one and then just saying, okay, I'm done with my tutorial, we'll actually go through all three. And the first one is pretty quick. We added the layer adjustment, okay, the levels adjustment in our layers panel here, okay. We can select the black eyedropper, and what's that saying is that what is the blackest image, what is the blackest part of this image, what has the deepest blacks. So I'm just going to quickly click here, see what happened, and then we're going to click what's the whitest part of the image. Sometimes this could be a little tricky. I'm just going to click here. Okay, not much really happened. And you can click around and mess around and see where it's picking up what. See? We'll go back. And then we have the midtones, which is sometimes is the hardest. You're not going to always be able to find a mid-tone gray. So I like to sometimes just go in here and mess around with the midtones and balance it out. What do I mean by balance? If this was a scale, this would be equally balanced. Okay, so we have that. So we can mess around with that and go crazy until it looks good. But you're playing it by eye. Okay. The next part is we put up levels. Okay, we're going to do a levels adjustment again. And this time we're going to be a little bit more precise. We're going to be a little bit more in depth. We are going to actually, remember now, levels isn't, we're working in RGB, so what does that mean? Red, green, blue. So think of it this way. This is dissecting that. Every single color is a per layer basis, is a per channel basis, which means you could tweak each one of the colors. So we have red, green, and blue. So we're going to go to red. We're going to look for any lost information. As you can see here, we're a little bit low in the blacks, so we're going to pull the blacks in. Okay, we're pretty good with the whites, maybe tweak that a little, and mess around with these midtones here to balance it out. Now, of course, it's not going to look correct because we're only on one color channel. We have to go to each color channel, and you may even find yourself going back to the other colors to tweak them. And then after that, we're going to go back to RGB mode and do some final tweaks, meaning pulling in some blacks and whites and messing with the midtone. So we just did red, so we're going to go to green. Again, we have some blacks here missing. So we're going to pull the blacks in. Maybe pull the whites up a little. Mess with that mid-tone. Again, we're going to go to blue. Same thing. Pull the blacks in. These whites are way out, so we're going to pull them in and mess around with these midtones here. Already you can start seeing that this image looks night and day. Okay, we're going to go back to RGB, do some final tweaks with the blacks and whites, maybe pull some blacks in. This image doesn't really need too much. Okay, balance that midtones out. Maybe pull a little white in, and watch this. Before and after. Before and after. Look how we got rid of that color cast. It had that warm yellowish orangey tint, and watch. We got rid of it. Okay? Before we start it and after we start it. And then of course I could do my vibrancy and my contrast and tweak this and pop the image out. And continue on with your workflow of whatever you do to your images, but I find this to be a lot better than just picking blacks and whites and midtones with the eyedropper tool. So this is my preferred way. There is a third way, and it's not always going to be available to you, but in this example we're going to be talking about a gray card. So you would have your client hold up a gray card, you would shoot the picture, and then you would shoot your series of normal pictures without the gray card, color correct the gray card, and then add and copy that level adjustment to the other images. But you're not always going to have a gray card with you, and you're not always going to have somebody holding one up. Well, it's the same to say as in this instance, but what we're going to do is we're going to throw this level adjustment away. We're going to go back to the normal image that wasn't color casted, okay? And we have a sample of a gray card here. So this is what your client would hold, or the person that you're taking a picture of. So for this example, I pulled in a sample. Okay, we don't want to do that. Okay, we pulled in a sample here. So here's what you would do. You would get your eyedropper tool. Once you go into level adjustments, you would get your eyedropper tool, and just like we did before, how we picked the blacks, the whites, and the midtones, this is going to make it a lot more easier. Okay, so here we have the blacks, here we have the whites, and look, a perfect midtone. So before and after, subtle changes. In this case, I'm not really crazy about the changes, but again, this is just a sample. In the real world, you would have an actual gray card. You would actually have somebody hold up a gray card. And then if I wanted to apply this to another image, I would just hold down the level adjustment and drag it to another document. And that image's color cast would be corrected from using the level adjustments of the gray card. So my preferred way, she also asked, what is your preferred way? I would say splitting it into color channels, RGB, and tweaking each color channel. That would be my preferred answer. But there's always more than one way to do a task in Photoshop, so you definitely play around with them and see what suits you. This is Sean, and I'll see you again soon.